Dear friends, welcome to the Priest Podcast, sponsored by the Napa Institute. You may not know it, but one of Napa's most meaningful efforts involves the formation and support of priests and religious. We have become fascinated by the stories of our clergy. Through this podcast, we want to bring you some of these amazing stories too, but in a way that is unique. Priests interviewing other priests from all walks of life and backgrounds. We think this series will be a great resource for everyone, those considering the priesthood, as well as those in active ministry who may be struggling or just looking for good ideas. But even the laity will benefit by learning more about the needs and thoughts of the clergy as we consider how to support and pray for them, given all they do for us. So sit back and enjoy this glimpse into the life and work of the priest. In today's episode, Msgr Roger Landry will interview Father Paul Shovelain.
Hello, everyone. This is Msgr Roger Landry, National Director of the Pontifical Mission Societies, and today's host for the Shepherd's Circle podcast, produced by the Napa Institute. I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Father Paul Shovelain, a priest of the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis, who's a pastor there, high school chaplain, runs a big school, does so many good priestly projects in that great archdiocese. He was ordained a priest in the year 2014 and has served in two big assignments over the course of his priesthood. I'm excited to hear him speak about those priestly experiences. Father Paul, welcome to the Shepherd Circle podcast.
It's great to be with you today.
So no priestly vocation falls out of the clouds. It generally is nourished in the seminary we call home. Can you describe what your home life was like growing up, and extended family, and your brothers and sisters and your parents?
Yeah, I'm very blessed with a wonderful family. I grew up in St. Michael, Minnesota, which in the Archdiocese, St. Paul, Minneapolis is known for having a lot of vocations. I believe I was the 33rd or 34th priest from St. Michael in the Archdiocese of St. Paul. Growing up, I had a very strong family, very strong faith-filled family. I was the fourth of 5 children, and my parents were involved in the church, especially my dad. He was on the finance council, he was on the parish council, he was very involved with the Knights of Columbus and pro-life efforts. And so we saw just the faith lived out in the home. You know, we prayed before every meal, we prayed the rosary on long car rides, and there was 5 of us children, so each child could lead a decade of the rosary. The faith was very much an integral part of our home. We had a lot of Catholic artwork around our home, whether it was images of the saints, the crucifix. The faith was very much a part of our family. Both sides of my family are Catholic as well. My grandparents, very strong in the faith. My grandma, Shovelain, before she passed away in 2020, I always say she was my greatest, and I believe she still is my greatest supporter. Just incredible love for the church and love for Mary. Which really instilled again in me the faith as a child. I would say as well, in addition to my strong family, it was the priests I had to look up to as role models. Father Denny Dempsey was the first priest that I ever wanted to be like. He left the parish when I was 4 years old, or 5 years old, somewhere in there. But just at a young age, that love for the priesthood, love for the church was instilled in my heart. I still remember my mom likes to share a story when I was about 3-4 years old. I would get up early and go help her make my dad's lunch before my dad went to work. And Mom just wanted me to go back to bed. And I said, I want a piece of cheese. And she's like, well, just open your mouth. I'll put it in. You go back to bed. And she put the cheese in my mouth. And I said, the body of Christ. And she goes, are you Father Paul? And I said, I'm not Father Paul. I'm Jesus. And so there's this deep love to be like Jesus from a young age, and just that was fostered both by my family and then the priests, Father Michael Becker, Father Leonard Siebenhaler, just wonderful priest mentors and role models for me, and then a variety of associates as well. In 2005, once Father Becker built our church, in 2004, he's got quite a few associates during those years as well. So I got to look up to those men. I entered seminary, one other important part besides my family and the parish, we had a wonderful Catholic school as well as part of that, was the third part was a youth ministry program. So we had a very strong youth ministry program in our parish. We went to Extreme Faith Camp. Actually was part of the original Extreme Faith Camp back in 2001, which has really grown in our diocese. And now they actually just purchased a camp for Extreme Faith Camp. It's just been the youth ministry program, though, helped my faith come alive. So my parents and the school and the priests were really instrumental, but the youth ministry program helped my faith become really more fully alive in my own desire to share the love of God with others. It gave me a lot of joy, in our youth program. And so that helped me to realize more fully my vocation to the priesthood. As I got involved with our youth program, being able to share my love for Christ, my identity wasn't found in my sports or my grades or my friendships, but my identity found in God. And that just gave me so much joy as a youth, being able to realize that, but then also as a disciple and then a seminarian, when I got to share that story, it really gave me a lot of life, and that just helped me to realize, led me into the seminary, but then also helped me to realize that true vocation to the priesthood.
I want to go back to St. Michael, Minnesota. So many priestly vocations. What are the Catholics in St. Michael, Minnesota doing so well?
That's a great question. Culturally, it was very much a Catholic town until I would say 2000. It's really exploded and grown. It's went from 7,000 to about over 20,000 people now. But there's just a strong family life. The town itself was built around the Catholic Church. So in long history, the church in town goes back to 1856, I believe, which was 2 years before Minnesota became a state. And so there was a strong Catholic heritage from the foundation.
German Catholics?
German Catholics, correct. Yep. So German Catholic community, and the church that was built in 1892 was built by 22 families and fit 400 people. So that church lasted for over 100 years. And then in 2004, our current church was built. So just the strong sense of community and worship of God, really beautiful churches too. So beautiful artwork, I think, was inspirational too as for the community. They had religious sisters there too for a long time. They currently do not have sisters there, but they had religious sisters in the school. So I was the third generation of my family to go through the Catholic school. My nieces and nephews are now the fourth generation to go through that same Catholic school.
And so were there particular initiatives like praying for vocations that were common? Eucharistic adoration, some type of parish vocation camp? Was the altar boy program there very fruitful in terms of producing future vocations?
Great question. So our Knights of Columbus would do a benefit, bring all of our altar servers to the Twins game each year. So that was an incentive to become an altar server and reward for that too. Praying for vocations was a part of before every mass or before masses. So we would go to mass usually Saturday night, and they'd do a rosary a half hour before mass, and then after the rosary, as a lot of parishes do, there's a whole slew of extra prayers. One prayer was for life, one prayer was the St. Michael prayer, and then another prayer was for vocations. And so that, yes, there was definitely a habit of praying for vocations. Bring from our homes priests, brothers and sisters. It was in all of those vocations it was focused on. So, and then adoration, that began, I think, when the new church was built. Or the current church. I try not to call it a new church anymore because it's 20 years old. But when the church was built in 2004, that's when we started the adoration chapel. My dad does a hour every Tuesday morning, and my mom does an hour on Saturdays as well. They do it together, but they have each individual ownership of that holy hour. And then, there's a desire to support vocations and efforts to do that as well. Through our youth ministry program too, they would bring in priests or sisters to speak about vocations. There's a vocations committee now, which my parents are a part of, and they to do hanging out with priests, and just as a way of, again, trying to make the priests and have intentional time with our youth.
So there's been 175 years, more or less, of prayer at St. Michael's for priestly vocations. Mm-hmm. And you are one of the fruits of those generations of German Catholics praying. Talk to us specifically about the various stages that the Lord specifically used in you to help you realize that he was calling you to follow what he had done in the first generation of priests with Peter, Andrew, James, John, Thomas, James, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Simon, and Jude. Where did Paul Shovelain get there?
That's a great question. I would say, again, with those priests, with the role models that inspired, so that was the inspiration stage as a young boy. Faith actualization, as far as the faith becoming my own, I would say was really 7th grade. I went to a different Catholic school, and it was hard for me to kind of fit in there. I went from 28 to 6 students. And it was hard to build relationships. I was struggling academically. So that's where I was again struggling with who I was. If I wasn't a perfect grade A student, if I wasn't the cool kid or fit in the class. And then sports too. I played public school sports because our school was too small to have any sports teams. And so I was really struggling with, okay, if I'm not a good athlete, if I'm not a good student, if I'm not a good friend or don't have good friends, like who am I? And at the same time, I went to Extreme Faith Camp that summer and really grew in love for the Lord and the Eucharist, but also came to understand who I was as a son of God. And that was the primary identity. I was able to receive my identity at that time as a son of God. And that really helped actualize, my love for the priesthood. Then I learned my love for Christ. And then after that, to be able to share my faith with others. So I got involved with our armor team as a high schooler. That was based off of Ephesians 6, put on the armor of God. And it was, we would go around to different parishes in Wright County where St. Michael's located, and we would do retreats for these middle school students. As high schoolers, we put on the retreats for the middle school students. And that really, again, actualized my faith to really love sharing my faith with others. Following that, I applied only to St. Thomas to go to the seminary, and that was a great experience.
When you were 17 or 18? Or?
Yep, 17 I applied, and then I was accepted to University of St. Thomas. But even in those years, that was a really good transformative experience as well, to come into who I was as a man and to love the church with the same spousal love that Christ has for the church. Really taught me how to love the church as my bride and serve the church as my bride with the Institute for Priestly Formation. In 2010, I attended that.
Which is at Creighton University in Nebraska.
Yep. It was a phenomenal program that really taught me how to pray and love the church as a bride. I also had a semester in Rome in 2009, spring of 2009, and that really, too, helped me just to see the beauty of the church, beauty of the bride. And that just gave me a new perspective. I got to see Pope Benedict on a number of occasions. World Youth Day, actually, in 2008 was another time. Cardinal Pell said, one choice is better than 1,000 options. And so especially as I was discerning, okay, do I get married and have this wonderful wife or this, and it was like when you're in seminary, like, oh, I could marry this one or this one or this one. And it's one choice. And so to choose to love the church there's freedom in that, which I really experienced. So kind of the seminary too was a coming into my identity as a son of God, as a brother of Christ.
And so you start off at St. Thomas Seminary, and then you continue at St. John Vianney?
Yeah, so St. Tom, it's a little bit confusing. So University of St. Thomas has two seminaries, St. John Vianney College Seminary and then St. Paul Major Seminary. So I was at the University of St. Thomas for 8 years, 4 at St. John Vianney, and then 4 at St. Paul Seminary.
And what were the biggest changes you saw in yourself during that formational period?
Changes in myself, that's a great question. I would say a maturity that came during those years, certainly. A realization, too, of a greater realization of the priesthood and the gift that it is, and the invitation that it is of surrender, of outpouring of self, of blessing, too, just learning again of how God is never outdone in generosity. There was I guess other specific changes, but just to be becoming a man in love with Christ and the church and really wanting to share that love of Christ. And I would say my philosophy years, I wasn't much of a philosopher. I didn't enjoy philosophy by any means, but at the same time, it taught me a lot and helped me grow. And I did Catholic studies as an undergrad, and that was really life-giving. So I had some challenging academics with philosophy, but also some really enjoyable. So it just definitely helped me to, again, sacrifice and work through the challenges of the philosophy, the logic, the epistemology. And actually, though, once I studied theology, that was when I really grew in love with St. Thomas Aquinas and came to actually be able to understand what I was reading when I had some really good theologians. Dr. Stephen Hipp at St. Thomas was phenomenal. Now I believe he's at Christendom College, but he was a huge inspiration for me. He taught 7 different classes I had, including Mariology, Ecclesiology, Christology, Trinitarian theology, prima pars,
Of the Summa of St. Thomas.
The Summa of St. Thomas. And so Dr. Hipp really helped me to grow into the priesthood as well, because he loved what he taught. He didn't just teach something to help you learn something. He loved the church. He loves Mary. He loves Christ. And it just came through his teaching, which has really influenced the way that I preach, the way that I preside at Mass. I want people to see that I love Christ. I love the church. I love the Eucharist. I love the Mass. I love them. And so I really tried to let that show in the way that I celebrate the liturgy.
So after 8 years at St. Thomas Seminary, you approach ordination. You were ordained in the Basilica Cathedral?
I was ordained a deacon in the Basilica on May 4th of 2013, and then I was ordained a priest on May 31st of 2014 in the Cathedral of St. Paul.
Which is one of the most beautiful churches in the country. Both of them are in the top 10 of the country's most beautiful churches. What was it like to be ordained a priest in the cathedral there in St. Paul? Such a majestic church, lifting everyone up to God, so effusive of the beauty that comes from our faith. It was special to be ordained there. What do you remember of the day of your ordination?
It was phenomenal. Just an incredible, incredible day. Loved every minute of it. Let's see, we each got to add a saint of our own choosing into the litany of saints. I chose St. John Paul II, just because of his love of the outdoors, his love of youth ministry, love of Mary, love of the Eucharist. So I took him as the patron saint for my ordination. The cathedral parking is really tough, and so they actually brought down a couple buses from St. Michael, I believe brought down a bus, and my teaching parish, St. Patrick's in Oak Grove, brought down a couple buses, and I just remember the people walking in. It was just so wonderful, and just getting to be with them and to pray with them most especially. And I still remember one of the kids from my future parish came up and she's like, "Are you Deacon Paul Shovelain?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she's like, "I'm at St. Peter's in Forest Lake." And so it was really wonderful too to see like the students that I was going to get to serve at my future parish. So that was just an incredible blessing to be able to have. It was a packed cathedral, which was phenomenal. There were 6 of us being ordained that day. Archbishop Neinstead began his homily with "Sing of Mary, Pure and Lowly," which was one of my favorite songs. Actually, I had requested it to be one of the songs that was sung at Mass, and it wasn't in the program. And I was like, why isn't it in this? And then he started off his homily about singing of Mary. And just, again, what a beautiful liturgy. The priests laying on the floor was incredibly powerful, just praying because we'd been kind of prepped for that. We've been praying through the liturgy. And really reflecting upon who do I want to pray for, and just praying for my family, praying for all those who had supported me through my journey, praying for those who I would serve, who had served previously in various capacities, and I would serve in the future in various capacities. So it's really just an intentional time of prayer and a real communal celebration, but also a sacrifice with laying down our lives for Christ and his church. One thing I remember, my brother Dominic was in seminary at the time. He did 4 years at St. John Vianney College Seminary at St. Thomas, and he was helping Father Peter Richards, who was my pastor at the time, vest me, and he put the chasuble on backwards. And so we got a great picture of me flipping around the chasuble, and I got a big smile on my face, and Dominic's got a big smile. It was just a very beautiful liturgy, and I love going back to the cathedral now to share it with people. So we Archbishop Hebda, who's a great archbishop, he's focusing this year currently as our archdiocese on the Eucharist. Last year we focused on small groups. This year we focused on the Eucharist. And so one of the things was to bring people to the cathedral. And so we brought people down for the dedication of the cathedral, which is October 14th. And it was just, I love sharing the history of the cathedral and just the architecture and how that leads to the experience of God and God present in our midst. And so I was able to do that with about 30 people back in October. And then this last New Year's Eve, we did a mass at 11 o'clock that finished at midnight, which was really beautiful. And we had about 20 young adults there. And so just being able to go back to the cathedral definitely reawakens within me those ordination graces.
And so the day after your ordination was your first Mass. I presume you returned to St. Michael, Minnesota, for the Mass there, the first Mass of Thanksgiving. The priest's first Mass is obviously the celebration of his own ordination. But what are your memories of your first Mass of Thanksgiving? Who preached? What was it like to say the words of consecration for the first time as you're listening to Jesus speak with your accent?
It was also phenomenal. It just a huge grace, huge blessing. So I did 10:30 a.m. Mass at St. Michael. And so we had, I believe, 11 other priests there, including the priest who baptized me, Father Bob Hamill, and then the priest who heard my first confession and gave me my first Holy Communion, Father Leonard Siebenhaler, and then Father Michael Becker, who was my pastor when I was confirmed. And so that was just really special to have all those sacraments. Father Frank Fried, who did my parents' marriage, he was there as well. And so many like sacramental moments in my life that were present at that Mass, and then to be able to be part of that sacramental moment on June 1st, 2014 in St. Michael was just a huge grace, huge blessing to have people. My family was there, and just powerful as well to be able to celebrate the Mass, to give the Eucharist to my family. And it was a really beautiful, moving experience. And actually going back to my ordination day, one grace just to share as well as we're talking about this, during Holy Communion at my ordination Mass, I was distributing Holy Communion, and it was a section with quite a few people from my parish or my teaching parish that I knew and that I'd walked through with in different brokenness. And just to give out the Eucharist, I was crying. It was so moving to think about the healing power of Christ going into these people and healing them, bringing union, bringing hope, bringing love, bringing mercy. It was so moving. And there was a lady that came up and wiped my tears, and I felt like she was like Veronica wiping the tears of Jesus. It was just, again, a real insight into the heart of Christ, of what it's like for him to be able to know these people, to love these people in their brokenness, and to anticipate a greater good for them as well, a greater hope of heaven. So that was a tremendous grace of my ordination day. But then those graces continued on at my first Mass. One thing I would say too is during the Thanksgiving at the end, I gave my dad my stole for my first confession, and just in fatherly fashion, he reminds me of something I didn't do at my first Mass because I forgot one of the priests. He was sitting in the row with the deacon, so I didn't see him when I was doing my thank yous, and I didn't say thank you to him. And my dad tells me as I'm giving him the stole, like this beautiful moment of like, here you go, Dad, this is my first stole. You forgot to thank Father Myers. I'm like, come on, Dad. Like, I just want to enjoy this moment with you. But again, continuing to look on where we can improve and to always give thanks to the people that we're supposed to thank too is important.
So when you were ordained and celebrated your first Mass, if I've heard you correctly, you already knew what your first assignment was going to be, because some people were greeting you. What was that first assignment, and what did you do as a parish priest there? What were the great takeaways of the graces that the Lord had given you? Because in every parish, not only does the priest form the people, but the priest is formed by the people and their receptivity and their gifts of faith. And so what were the graces of that first assignment, and where was it?
So I was assigned to St. Peter's in Forest Lake, which is about 20 minutes north of the Twin Cities. And yes, it was a wonderful assignment. I was assigned to work with Father Dan Bodine, who was the pastor up there at the time, and he still is there. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to pour out myself to the people there at Forest Lake. And it was a lot of relational ministry opportunities. I was very involved with the school. And also just building connections with the families. So I was involved with more so with the youth program. We did Sunday fun days, just trying to, because I wanted to visit, all other people's homes, but realistically that's challenging. And so just invite them to stick around after Mass. So we would do a potluck meal or get some pizza and just have, after Mass, we'd have lunch together, and then we'd play kickball, and then we'd pray a rosary. And it was just a way for me to get to know many families at a time. Families would invite me to their homes, which I really appreciated, really enjoyed, and built a lot of really close, good relationships through that. Actually, one of the things that I was introduced to, so actually for ordination, I was given a boat, a fishing boat. And
Who gives a priest a fishing boat?
It's a good question. No.
Peter was the fisherman, Paul was not, but...
And so it was a huge blessing, because I agree. Like I didn't know how to drive a boat. I did not know much about being a boat owner at all. I didn't know how to winterize a boat, but
There's 10,000 lakes in Minnesota with which to take it out.
Correct. And so it ended up being a huge blessing. And now 10 years down the road, I'm much more comfortable. I know how to fish, and it's a way that I build relationships with parishioners. And so that first summer I headed on Forest Lake, and I was able to take parishioners out, and it was just a real blessing to be able to utilize that too. And then ice fishing too was a thing we do in Minnesota, where we drive out on the lakes and drill holes in the ice and just try to catch fish and ice fishing is a great opportunity actually for fishing in a social setting, because you can have a whole bunch of people fishing together in the same spot. And I found both fishing on the boat and ice fishing to be great ministry opportunities, and that grew out of my time in Forest Lake. So one of the families for Christmas that year gave me a tip-up, a bucket, and a fishing rod, and I never had any ice fishing gear. And now I have a fish house and an auger, and I can take parishioners. So like this, I take people out ice fishing in Minnesota now. So I take fathers and sons and grandfathers as well. And I actually have an ice fishing tournament at my parish in February. And so it's just a way of building that community, but also then speaking the word into that too. So trying to build relationships, but ultimately bring them to Christ and be able to share our faith with each other. And actually last year at OCIA, I had 3 of the men that I've had out fishing that became Catholic.
Well, you are a fisher of men by your ordination, and happy to see that you're doing it even in the cold of Minnesota winters. You were there, and then you got reassigned to a place where you were a parochial vicar, and then administrator, and then a pastor. Tell us about your present assignment, where you've been for the last 8 years.
Yeah, so I was assigned to St. John the Baptist in New Brighton in 2016, and it's been a phenomenal assignment. I was assigned with Father Michael Skuzacek, who was my predecessor, great pastor, great love for the Lord and the Eucharist. He was in seminary he actually was in seminary formation at St. John Vianney Seminary, and then he was, after he left our parish at St. John the Baptist in New Brighton, he actually went back to the seminary to finish out his time as a priest. He's now retired, but still helping out in a variety of ways. But he was an incredible mentor, very generous in thinking about how to serve the people and help them love the Eucharist and care for them. And he very much was one who wanted to be think with the people and help people to journey together on the road to heaven. He was very collaborative, which has helped me as well in my approach, just trying to. Sometimes we have to make quick decisions, but other times it's a group movement, and so it takes a little bit longer. But he's really helped me, which I believe is Archbishop Hebda's style as well, as how do we try to teach people, help understand them, but continue to teach them and move them towards Christ. It can be exhausting at times, instead of just running out front with saying, you guys got to come with me, but how do we move together? And he was really instrumental in helping me as a pastor grow in that way. So I was 3 years associate, 1 year as parochial administrator, then I became pastor in 2020, which was just a crazy time.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID, yeah. So my first 6 months as parochial administrator was great. And then I left actually on retreat in March of 2020. And my associate pastor, I like to joke that he shut the parish down, was the archbishop that shut our parishes down, because of the pandemic. But we got... In that, actually, though, it gave me the opportunity to think creatively, to get creative. It was the first time I'd ever live streamed anything. I'd had a Facebook page, but never really utilized it. And then all of a sudden, we started live streaming masses on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. And we had, praise God, we already had put in a live stream camera in our church. It wasn't fully operational, but we had it operational by actually Palm Sunday of 2020. And so we were able to live stream our liturgies, and we continue to live stream our liturgies to meet people and to reach a broader audience. We did adoration in the parks, which was one of my greatest joys, greatest memories of. So March 28th was the stay-at-home order that Governor Walz issued for the state of Minnesota, that you couldn't leave your house unless you had X, Y, or Z reasons. So we did on March 27th, the day before, I organized with our Knights of Columbus and my staff and a variety of parishioners, park procession. So we went to 7 different parks that were in our parish boundaries, and we had exposition of the Blessed Sacrament in the bed of my truck. We did the litany for In Time of Need, which the Archbishop had written. And so we did that, and I went through and blessed each car with its occupants individually. And it was looking at these people through their windshields and just crying with them and crying with the Lord. And they, like I had people that were in my OCIA. I was like, we're going to get you the sacraments. Don't you worry. We're going to figure this out. People that had recently lost loved ones, and just trying to encourage them that they're not alone, and just people in so many different states in life. And that day, March 27, we had over 1,000 vehicles between the 7 different parks. It was just a phenomenal experience. But just to see again their love for the Eucharist. We had the cops called on us a couple times, and I got a really cool picture of the police car next to my truck, and we're holding the tabernacle up through the sunroof after we
You're holding the monstrance?
the tabernacle actually.
The tabernacle through the sunroof in your truck.
My truck, yeah. So I bought a used truck. I didn't want a sunroof in a truck, let me just say that. But I have a sunroof, and so praise God, it worked out. So at the end of the prayer time in the park, we put the Blessed Sacrament in a tabernacle in my truck, and then afterwards we gave out the palm branches because Palm Sunday was coming up. And so the message to the people was, wave the palm branches as our Lord leaves the park. And so it was really cool to be able to do that. And so we're holding the tabernacle through the sunroof, and the police officers right next to us telling us that we were supposed to social distance and da-da-da-da-da. But we didn't get arrested. We didn't get any tickets, but we did get the cops called on us a few times.
And so one of the big initiatives that you have now as pastor is Catholic education. It's a huge passion that you have. Talk to us about your Catholic school. Talk to us about some of the innovative ways that you've been trying to help that Catholic school really preach the Catholic faith in a consequential way to the children and to their families.
Yeah, our Catholic school is our biggest ministry as a parish, and so really investing in that school is an important part as a pastor, to show the children that we care about them, to show the families that we're invested in them. They obviously invest in us and sending their children there and also paying tuition. But we have experienced tremendous growth in our school, which has been beautiful too. So we grew 5 years in a row there, almost 70%, from 238 to 403 last year. And the growth, caused it from a variety of factors, people realizing the challenges that they saw in the public school system, but also wanting to have in-person learning, wanting not to have the mask requirement. All the many factors brought students to our school, but has continued to bring them as well, which is beautiful. But with that growth, I was realizing I don't know a lot of our new families. And so how do I get to know these families? And so what we ended up creating was meet and greets. So actually one of my former associate pastors, he had a hobby of building tiki bars at the rectory. And so he built one in our basement. And so it's kind of like a fun social space that we can bring people in. It's kind of easy entry. And so we bring people in. And when he left, I renamed it Pier 153 for the 153 fish that Jesus caught after the resurrection. So bringing in my love for fishing, but also the Lord, of course, keeping him at the center. And so we have some fishing themes and pictures of our Lord at the water. But I bring the families in. So now we provide childcare for the families, the couples, the husbands and wives, or the fathers and mothers, and we invite them in. And it's about a month before school starts, so that gives them the opportunity to get to know other parents of their students in their grade, who their students will be growing up with. And so they can build connections, but also gives me the opportunity to meet them. So I have a couple of my staff there, my principal is there, and gives us the opportunity to meet and greet them. But then as well, so we have about a half-hour social time, and then I have kind of formal introductions, and then I have, after those introductions, I have 3 couples share about how this isn't just a school, this is a parish. And so there's programs for husbands, programs for wives, as men to grow, as women to grow, programs for couples, programs for the whole family. And so they share a little bit about different ministry events that we do as a parish, and how, just to help them see a broader picture of not just getting into a school, but getting into a parish community centered on Christ. And so we do different things, and they talk about our All Saints party, that's tremendously grown too. So when I started there, we had like 5 saints that came to the All Saints party, and a whole bunch of other random costumes, right?
Saints meaning children dressing up in the costumes of their patron saints or the others that they've chosen. Right?
So saints students dressing up as saints, and we only had like 5 students that dressed up like saints that first year. And now this last year we had almost 300 dress up as saints, and it's
Almost like a great cloud of witnesses from Hebrews 12.
Hebrews 12, one of my favorite verses, yeah. And just to build those saints. So that's really what we want to do in the school. So we have All Saints Party. We have a Journey to the Inn where we invite our families to come and journey with the wise men to find baby Jesus. So my sister has a dairy farm, and so I get calves and chickens from the farm, and then we bring them to my parish in New Brighton. And after Mass, we do a meal in our hall, and then we go to the church, read the story of the birth of Jesus and the story of the wise men, and then we journey with the wise men to find baby Jesus at an outdoor manger around the calves and the chickens, and we have another parishioner that brings their goats and a donkey, and so it's just a phenomenal experience again of helping that faith come alive. And then we also do an Easter egg hunt on Holy Saturday. The eggs are empty, just like the tomb on Sunday morning. And we do a variety of Catholic activities with that. So trying to build on some secular things, but really make them Catholic and Christ-centered. And so there's a variety of activities that we do in an Easter egg hunt too, to help share the Easter story, the resurrection, with our parishioners. So we do these events to complement what we're doing in the school. So we have these social events on the church side that really bring them into encountering the message of Christ, his birth, his resurrection, the saints in heaven. And so we really try to be intentional about inviting our school families to those activities. So anyways, we talk about those at the meet and greet, and then also at the meet and greet too, with our kindergarten parents. We have them share a little bit of the parents. So they talk about the small groups that they're involved with. They talk about Catholic Watchmen. They talk about Devoted. So a program for men, a program for women. And it just gets the couples at those meet and greets thinking about, how am I following Jesus? Do I follow him? Do I go to church? And so, for example, Eagle Brook is a really big church in Minnesota. And we had a couple that had been going there that after the meet and greet started coming back to church. We had a couple as well that got their daughters baptized. And so we're seeing those relationships begin at these meet and greets and be developed as they go through our school. We had
good OCIA numbers of those who want to become Catholic as a result of their affiliation with the school.
Correct, yeah. So we had 7 parents a couple of years ago that became Catholic and 6 last year. And we currently, I believe we have 3 or 4 in our current class, which is just, again, beautiful to see the school as a vehicle for conversion. So we're seeing it amongst our students as well. We have second graders that are coming into the faith because their desire to receive Holy Communion with their classmates. But we also, put the expectation on the parents to be able to raise their children in the faith. We do catechesis of the Good Shepherd, was another thing we started here about 4 years ago to really create a culture within our preschool. So our preschool was drawing in a whole variety of families, especially from the area that weren't Catholic. And so okay, how do we make sure that they come to understand the message of Christ? And so we teach them our catechesis of the Good Shepherd program, which is a Montessori program that is really hands-on learning and helps them to encounter Christ and understand a little bit more too when they go to Mass and what they're experiencing.
You're now in your 11th year as a priest of Jesus Christ. In the first 11 years of your priesthood, would you be able to identify one joy? And have there been any particular sort of challenges of being a priest in the beginning of the 21st century that you've needed the Lord's help to overcome?
Great question. Greatest joy. Maybe to share one joy in particular and then a challenge at the same time. So July 11th, I was installed as pastor at St. John's in New Brighton, St. John the Baptist Catholic Church and School. And it was incredible day. Archbishop Hebda was there. At the same time, there was struggle because we had a social distance and all this stuff. We had 250 people maxed out in the church, and then we had more people in our social hall. And so it was kind of chaotic in that way. We had to do an outdoor reception because of the pandemic. But yet, what was so beautiful that is our parish came together and we figured out collaborative ways to how we could still celebrate and make it really beautiful. At that Mass, we blessed the icon of our Blessed Mother, which was a new icon that we had just had written for our place as well. A church that's a little bit more, it was built in 1968, so it's a little more modern, but we've been able to bring in some iconography and really add to the beauty, add beauty to that space. And so that day, Archbishop Hebda was gracious enough to come out and celebrate the Mass. And then the next day at 4:00 in the morning, my dad called me to say my grandma had just passed away. And so it went from extreme high to extreme low. And my grandma, like I said, was one of my biggest supporters. I love celebrating Mass with her in her nursing, in the care facility where she was at. I actually, on her 90th birthday, it was May 5th of 2020, and I did a live stream presentation that day of my favorite titles of Mary on our Facebook page. And so just the creative way of being able to share the good news, and she was able to watch it. And then I talked to her after that, and it was just incredible birthday for her, May 5th. But then July 12th, she passed away. And so just to go through the ups and downs of powerful moments and tragic moments, but just knowing we have the same Jesus through it all. And the line that has hung with me through it all is Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I continue to go back to that passage. It's kind of my sign-off line on my Facebook page is, remember, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Have a great day, SJB. God bless you all.
It's a wonderful opportunity to have talked to you today, Father Paul Shovelain, priest of the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minnesota. Imagine what it would be like if we had more priests like Father Paul Shovelain. That's why the Lord Jesus urges each of us to pray to the Harvest Master for more laborers for his harvest. So please join us in praying for shepherds after Jesus' heart and encourage the young men you know who show signs of a vocation to ask Jesus in prayer whether he might be calling them to serve him, the church, and the world as ordained priests. They don't have to live in St. Michael, Minnesota in order to have a priestly vocation, even though we rejoice that 33 have recently received those vocations there. Please check back next week for an interview with another hardworking priest in the vineyard of the Lord. I'm Msgr Roger Landry, and I've been delighted to be your host today on Shepherd's Circle podcast. God bless you.
Thanks again for joining us today. For more information about how you can join us in supporting our work with clergy and religious, go to napa-institute.org. May God bless you this day and always.